Welcome, everybody. My name is Coach Mary, and you are live on Heart Transformation Table. Today, I am so happy and excited to have with me a very wonderful and accomplished lady by the name of Jill Johnson.
Hi, Mary. How are
A
you?
small introduction.
Sure.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
So, for a small introduction, because I believe there's so much more to say about you. I am so impressed. By the way, I don't know if I told you, but I am a business management trained professional. So, looking at all your accomplishments, I am super inspired, very,
Wonderful.
very inspired.
Thank you.
Um, Jill Johnson is an award-winning management consultant, multi-awarded business executive who excels in developing and implementing strategies for turnarounds or growth that gets results. She is a widely respected business executive and leader who has been a member of numerous boards and executive committees of various business, professional, and governmental boards. She has been quoted on a range of management issues in American national media, including The Wall Street Journal, The New York Times, Forbes, and many others. She has authored several books, one of which is titled Compounding Your Confidence: Strategies to Expand Your Opportunities for Success. And she is today's special guest on our weekly live here on her transformation table. Our topic today is how to build career confidence. Jill, welcome. Please introduce yourself better than I could ever do.
No, you did a great job, Mary. Thank you so much. And I'm excited because I don't know if people know, you're in Nairobi, Kenya, and I'm in Minneapolis,
Yes.
Minnesota. So we have this worldwide perspective today. And I think that the issues of confidence, though, transcend international boundaries, probably intergalactic too. And so I think it's such an important topic. And one thing people always say to me, Jill, you're a management consultant. You go in and you solve business problems. Why did you write a book about confidence? And for me, the real reason is that oftentimes I'm dealing with very troubled situations or very complex decisions, and people lose their confidence often when they're in those kinds of settings. And so I was seeing over and over again, even at the highest executive and board levels, the loss of confidence when things happen. So for me, it was a very important piece to put together. And I'm also a mentor, so I've mentored a lot of people over the years, and it was a way for me to mentor more people. And it's been so great because the book has been sold around the world on 6 continents. If somebody in Antarctica is listening, you're my last stop. And so it's been great to see the level of impact that the book and the content has had. It's really transcended just, my little office here in Minnesota. It's really gone around the world.
Well, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence, and also for responding to our call for an interview. So I'll get right into the questions. The
Sure.
first one is, what is career confidence?
Well, I think career confidence is a recognition that as you move through the different aspects of your career, you have to take responsibility and control for building your potential for success. And so a lot of times people at that early career path, they've come out of school and they have a lot of book learning, but when they get into, as they call the real world, they lose their footing a bit. They get very uncomfortable because they realize how much they don't know. And so some people try and, quote, fake it till you make it. And I hate that, because anybody with any business savvy is going to look at you and know you're faking it. It's better to just simply acknowledge, I'm at that new level, and now I'm going to take control and I'm going to start to learn. And even as you progress through a long arc of a career, the principles are still the same, and there are 3 of them. The first is that you go through progression. So when you start building a skill, then you're not going to be very good at it. But as you work over time, your level of mastery will increase. And once you hit that mastery level in the level that you're at and you move to a new level, you're starting all over again. So progressions is the first part of it. The second are what we call practice, and that's looking for opportunities to work on your skill, to hone in on smaller bite-sized chunks of it so that, again, you can build that mastery. And then the third is presentation, and it's how you bring yourself to the world, your authentic self, your self that has worth and value because you believe you have value. And so those 3 P's, if you will, progressions, practice, and presentation, are really the foundation of the blueprint for how you build your confidence over a course of a career.
I think I completely resonate with you talking about progression and mastery, how you have to keep practicing your skill. Because even for me, doing a live, showing my face was really difficult. And eventually, I can tell that I'm getting more confident. I'm not as afraid as I was. So I do agree with you in terms of that. But how does a lack of career confidence impact that progression? If you don't have confidence in yourself and in your career, how does it impact it?
Oh, it clearly has impact. And what it does is it stalls opportunities for you. So if people look at you and you're not very confident, you're never bringing good ideas to the table, or you're not presenting them in a way that people believe that your idea will work, you'll get dismissed. And what happens then is you don't get invited into the rooms that you should be in where actual decisions are being made. You might as well just sit at your desk and the world will go on around you. And I think for women in particular, we're often culturally conditioned to be silent, to be humble, to not showcase our talent and expertise because we might offend someone if they see us as being too much, or they might be offended because there's a gender dynamic or there's some other issue, or they're older and they don't like that when younger people speak their mind. So I think it's a delicate balance, but I've seen more truly successful potential people derail their absolute success because they stop believing in possibilities for themselves. And more important, Mary, and this is the real key, they stopped working on their skill development. They weren't intentional about it. They just assumed since they had a good early career that the rest of the career would just navigate fine. Trust me, the early stages are pretty easy. People want to help young people. They want to open doors for you. They want to make things happen. But as you move through the arc of your age and different levels of career, all bets are off, because then you have to earn the right to be in the room. And so, as I said, I think it's important, but I think a lot of people just sabotage their own potential because they just don't believe that they're worthy of anything more.
I think it might also be a lack of knowledge. Is it possible that people just don't know that you might have started well, but for you to continue past a certain level, you need to add to the skill sets?
Absolutely. And I think that's where coaches like yourself come into play, because you've seen this arc and you are able to help open doors and perspectives to what to think about as they develop their pathway. And it's the reason I wrote the book. I wanted to let people know that by taking control of really identifying what it is that you want to do or to be or to try, that it's that intentional action that develops your skills and develops your mastery. And when I wrote the workbook, Career Confidence, it's the workbook behind me, I can't mentor everyone who calls, and I'm not a coach. So I'm a management consultant. I'm old school. I go in and look at data and markets and competition and solve business problems. But often those problems were a direct result of the people not having confidence in understanding the complexities of their market or those circumstances. And so the workbook was a way for me to reach more people. After the book was released, the workbook, because it's a self-study guide, these are all the questions that I would ask you if you were a mentee of mine. And they're hard questions. And I remember I had a young man I was mentoring. I started working with him when he was 26. He's now 42. And I have no memory of asking this, but it sounds like something I would say. And he gave me his strategic plan. You know, he was so proud of himself. And I started laughing when I looked at it, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is not a strategic plan. This is a to-do list, because he didn't know what a strategic plan really was. So I opened up some opportunities to help him better understand the strategic planning process. He in turn referred me for work, so it was a mutual relationship. Well, but one of the things that I said is, when you're 40, who do you want to be? Who's the guy I'm going to meet? And that's the part I don't remember asking him that, but he told me later that was the single most profound thing I ever said to him, because it forced him to think ahead so that he could begin to break down what skills did he need, what people did he need to meet, what workshops or seminars or things did he need to go to, or experiences did he need to have. And I'm so excited to say that at 42, he is the guy that at 26 he told me he wanted to become, but it was done with intention and with purpose. And you know, he used me as his mentor, and you know, I guess in a bit I was a bit of his coach, but it was more coaching through the consulting. But he's hired other coaches. He's worked hard to develop those other skills, and I'm so proud of him today. He's celebrating yesterday was his 2nd anniversary in business on his own, but you know, and it's been a terrific success. But we prepared him for what that would feel like, what that would be like. He had money in the bank. So we had all those foundational principles set up. So it gave him confidence when he stepped into that solo arena and away from the big corporate comfort and security. But it was something that had been a long time in the planning, and it was successful because he controlled as much of it as he could. And so I'm really excited about that.
I think what has stuck out to me is intention and purpose, and knowing that what you're planning is a strategic plan as opposed to being a to-do list.
Absolutely.
I think it's really important. Yeah.
You know, I do strategic plans on myself. I mean, I didn't go from growing up in a really small little town. Most of my extended family is not college educated. In fact, a number of them didn't finish high school, including my father. And so for me, you know, I always tell people I'm Bobby Johnson's little girl, little Jill Johnson from Hudson, Wisconsin. And so the arc of going from that small and very humble beginning to 2 business halls of fame, and I was named an icon by one of our major business publications late last year, you know, that doesn't happen by accident. You don't get invited to boards or federal boards or things like that just because of an accident. It's because I worked intentionally to build and hone my skills, and also to create opportunities for people to see me. And that's part of that presentation piece. It's allowing the world to see who you are and how amazing you are, or how amazing you could become, and then following through on every commitment that I accepted beyond the level that was expected, beyond the level of what most people would do, so that I maximize the learning value and I maximize the potential spinoff as a direct result of it.
You mentioned before women and how we are unfortunately conditioned to put ourselves down and not speak of our achievements. Yeah. So would you say that the confidence problem is more with women, or is it equal among the sexes?
I will pull the curtain back and tell you the dirty little secret is women are more vocal about talking about they don't have confidence, but men lack confidence as well, but they mask it better because their cultural norm is not to admit when they're feeling insecure, to not admit when they're feeling like they can't possibly do this. And so I think there are just different angles and aspects to the cultural dynamic of how people present. And to me, it's all the same. Most of my clients are men. When you move up those higher ranks of the organization, that's often what you're dealing with. And, to be able I'm only 5'2", so 5 feet 2 inches tall in the US. So I'm very short for those of you in other countries that are like, I don't know how many centimeters that is. But I'm not very tall. So, and they say that leaders are very tall people. And I'm like, well, that's not me. I get the hair to give me a little bit of extra lift because it makes me look a little taller. But, I'm there. But I'm listened to in those meetings because I'm confident in my knowledge. I'm confident because I prepared ahead of time for the meeting. I already knew a couple things that I was going to address or bring up, or I had some questions I was going to ask. And I think a lot of times, and I'll just default now for women, what often happens is they're not prepared because they're doing 95 other things. They're trying to get their job done, raise their kids, get the kids to bed, get dinner made, do all those things. And so by the time they go into the meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning, they're lucky their hair is combed. And so what ends up happening, because everything gets smashed up to, I'm in the meeting, oftentimes women will start talking about an issue and they talk around about it because they're trying to figure out what is the point they're making. So they talk about a bunch of different things before they get to a point. But by the time they get to the point, people have tuned them out because they weren't saying anything of value. So I try and encourage people when they're going into a meeting where they're feeling a bit uncomfortable to take a few minutes ahead of time and process what is the one thing I need to share with folks today. If you have to do a presentation, for example, a lot of people have to go do presentations to very important people in their company or their government or whatever, and they wait till the last minute, and their first practice of it is the actual event when they're giving it. That just doesn't fly anymore. And so I think you're more impactful, again, if you leverage that preparation, because it's the preparation that seeds the confidence in your progression. I've got this. I know what I need to do. Like with the technical piece. I've never done a StreamYard before. You're my very first. So I'm like, trying to look at videos on the internet and talk to a couple of people beforehand. Should I be worried about this? How much, is this, do I have all the right equipment and the lighting and everything else? And so it helps both to minimize your stress. So when you appear, you are as you can be, and in a really good way. And I think that a lot of times we cut ourselves short because we're just trying to hang on because we've got so many balls in the air, and then we don't get things completed to the level that we want. And that affects how people view us. That affects those future opportunities, if you will. And so it's a great thing. But no, I think men have issues with it, but they're just a lot better at not sharing it. And I've had men cry. I mean, I'm in the room and the problem that we're trying to deal with is so bad. And they're so afraid that they're going to mess it up and they're not going to be able to figure out how to resolve the issue. And that's the reason that I'm there. So, but their team would never know, how scared they were, because they present that through their presentation of their body language. They look and act confident, but they just aren't feeling it. So, but it happens. It's both.
I think also as women, we talk to each other more. We
Exactly.
have our little girlfriend conferences and we talk and we get it out and we vent, even though it doesn't sometimes show on the professional level. Mm-hmm. I think that it helps that we already know how to talk to each other. I think men don't know how to talk to each other.
Well, they don't talk in that way. But here's one other next step I would encourage the women who are venting, if you will, to your friends. A lot of times what we're looking for when we're venting is affirmation that we should feel that way. And that's fine to a certain point. But then you have to take it the next step and go, okay, so what are you going to do about it? And what can you do about it? What parts of this issue are controllable for you? I was at a really, we call it nosebleed level. I mean, it was super high executive level women event. And you had to be at the upper echelons to just be invited to come. So it was very, very senior, very savvy, accomplished women executives. And one of them was complaining at the table that she had just been dismissed after a presentation she had given to either even higher level people. And she was framing it all in the, well, they did that because I'm a woman. But the more I listened to her vent, if you will, I finally couldn't help myself, as you can imagine. I just speak my mind. And I said, hey, Susie, let me unwind this for you. The reason he said to his colleague, I don't know what the hell she's talking about, is because he didn't know. You weren't speaking in his language. You weren't speaking about what your information was according to the issues he cared about. And I said, it had nothing to do with your gender. It had to do with the fact that you weren't delivering the content in a consumable way for him. Because as soon as the guy said, I don't know what she's talking about, his colleague turned to him and said, oh, she's talking about ROI. And so the other guy translated, if you will, for her. And so that's what I talk about when I say women give away their power, because they haven't prepared enough to think about what are those things that matter to the other people in the room, and how can I frame my insight that I'm going to share in ways that are meaningful to them. So she was just, spewing her info, but it had no meaning to the people in the room until the other guy flipped on the switch and said, oh, it's return on investment. And then the guy's like, oh, okay, now I get it. And the only way she had to frame it was that she was being dismissed because she was a woman. And so she was in this women's room venting and blaming and not taking any ownership or responsibility for what she had done to contribute to the challenge that she was experiencing. And she stared at me and she didn't have an answer. And then after the dinner was over, she kept looking at me and she's like, no one has ever explained it to me that way. And you're absolutely right. I never thought about it like that. So we waste a lot of time blaming the other people in the room when, okay, I'll let you vent for a little bit. My sister's really good at this. I used to like to vent a lot. And my sister finally put me on a timer and she said, you get 5 minutes and then we're done. Like, why? She said, because you're not changing the issue. All you're doing is complaining about the same thing over and over and over again. And it was, I'm like, but you're my sister. You're supposed to listen to me whine.
Yeah. You're supposed to ask which car we are taking to go kill this person, not.
Yeah, exactly. And like, are you going to use a hatchet or a switchblade,
Yeah.
And so it was, as I've matured through, a very long career now, I've realized that most of the issues are issues that I'm either emotionally reacting to because I haven't, broken apart the situation very well to understand it, or I just am not taking any ownership or responsibility. And that's the part for so many of us. There are lots of things that are out of our control. But if you control as many of the things that are in your purview, can I learn how to speak professionally? Can I learn how to appear on camera? Can I learn how to give a speaking engagement? And you give hundreds of them in smaller, less stressful venues, so that when you have a big event, a big speech, you are ready to walk in the room because you've worked on all sorts of elements of speaking and stagecraft and storytelling and speech structure and content delivery and moving around the room with purpose, not because you're pacing because you don't know where to stand. And all of those things, you've honed your skill. So by the time you've used your progressions, you started not very good and then you got better. And then your practice was how you got better. And then your presentation, you are now ready to walk into that room and own it and be listened to. I'm listened to by people. I'm listened to by boards and senior executives because I'm wicked good at what I do and research. but I bring it in a very approachable and knowledgeable way. And I then, because I'm a good speaker and a professional speaker, I walk them through a framework of the issue and the problem, so everybody's on the same page. And then you identify, here are the issues to address, and here are some solutions that will address that. And all of it, I mean, you go through that multiple times. I mean, I've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients, and so you learn in each room. Do I ever get caught off guard? Of course. I'm human. Do I ever have days where I just, want to turn off the lights and crawl back into bed because no one's ever going to call me again? Of course, that's the nature of the humanity. But then you look for solutions, not just venues to vent. And I think that's the difference between the people that I see who, when they hit a brick wall and start moving up that career path, it's the ones who focus on problem solving that are ultimately the long-term people that succeed.
So I've diagnosed myself. I have career confidence issues. Mm-hmm. So what do I do next? Where do I start?
Well, I think you have to break it down into what areas are you lacking. So another one that women are notorious for is saying, I'm not good with numbers. Because again, culture often says girls shouldn't do the sciences or learn math, or honey, you don't need to worry about that. I'll take care of that for you. And but as you move up through the corporate ladder, for example, or if you're ever going to be a business owner, you need to know your numbers. You need to understand what drives revenue, what drives profit. And I had a really good friend a number of years ago that, again, nosebleed level executive. She was general counsel for a Fortune 500 law firm. Amazing woman, brilliant. And her desire was to serve on boards. That was the next step for her. And we were talking about it, but then she threw in the kicker. Oh, I don't think that'll ever happen for me. Why not? Are you crazy? I mean, I'm a good judge of talent. And I was like, I thought she was nuts. And she was afraid to admit it. She said, Jill, I don't know how to read a financial statement. I'm like, oh my God, I can get that taken care of for you in an afternoon. Let's pick 4 things that you want to learn about on the financial statement. And those will be your 4 things that you focus in on while you're getting more comfortable. And I said, and take a class. Next thing you know, 6 months forward, she had taken a Harvard class on finance for non-financial executives. And she just laughed. She said, you were so right. I just wasn't owning. I was owning the fear of what I didn't know, and not, I'm smart. I can watch a YouTube video. I can take a class. I can do an online class. I can find a coach like you, Mary. I can do all sorts of things. I can take control to learn. So what I suggest that people do is break down some of the things that are getting you into trouble now, whether it's you're not good at sales, or you're not good at writing proposals, or whatever it is, and pick a couple things that you want to work on to improve, and then just hone in and work on them for a bit. And you're going to start to see that you're more comfortable. Set up an email notice to check in with yourself in a month. Am I doing any better? And then all of a sudden you're going to go, yeah, I figured that out. And then you pick the next 2 or 3 things that you work on. If you're doing a speaking engagement, for example, but you're not a really accomplished speaker, I've been speaking for years. So for me, give me a topic and I can usually riff on it for half an hour. It's not a problem. But if that's not an issue for you, then when you have the opportunity to do a speaking engagement, maybe it's speaking to a youth group or a church group or a community business group where it's not quite your clients or peer group from work, those are safe spaces to practice in. And pick one thing you want to get better on. My niece called me, and she has a job at 3M, which is a worldwide company, and she was going to have to do a big presentation, and she was all stressed out. I'm like, just pick one thing. I said, so do you want to just do better eye contact with the audience? Don't read your notes. And she's like, that's what I want to work on. And so she did. And then she called me. She's like, oh my gosh, Auntie Jill, it went so well. And the best part is I didn't know that I was going to be filmed, and I had a worldwide audience of my peers and higher level people. But because I was just focused on, you know, conveying that to the audience in an approachable way, I got rave reviews. And, you know, and now she does it all the time, and it's, you know, I don't get calls anymore. She doesn't need me anymore. And, but, you know, and I think a lot of times we make things so big. I'll never be able to speak on that big stage. No, you won't. You're not ready yet. So you have to earn the right to be there. And so you practice on, I did lots and lots of little speeches, even to speaking to a kindergarten class of 5-year-olds, you know, that for me was actually hard. And trying to keep my voice, you know, yeah, because, and talking to the kids at their level, but respectfully. And so I think so much of it is we give our power away and feel like, you know, we can't do anything. And that's what Compounding Your Confidence, the original book, was about. It was to pull that curtain back and sharing stories of things that I've learned throughout the course of my career in a framework that makes sense and anybody can use. And then when I did the workbook, it was to take those questions that I think we all need to review. I go through these kinds of questions for myself all the time. And then I have a tip book of all the best advice from the original book. It's just 64 tips broken down into a new book that will be launching probably in January of 2023. And the other two are available on Amazon. But it's so amazing when you step back and you go, I took control. I identified things I wanted to work on. And there is a deep sense of accomplishment that comes from having achieved your what you set out to do. And then you put yourself in another uncomfortable place as you move to a new level, because now you're starting all over again, but you're at that new level and you have that foundation of mastery from the previous level you were at. I'm always doing new things because I want to learn and grow. And I think that kind of approach really is helpful for people, especially as they are in, you know, as they're moving through that career.
I think you talked about people stopping themselves, and especially once you have a place of affirmation. I want to mention that as a conditioned thinking, because the conditioned mind is designed to protect you from taking risks.
Yep.
So that you don't embarrass yourself or you don't fail, because that's what your inner being might be thinking. So it does take you having to force yourself to come out and just do it. And when you talked about your friend who ended up doing the courses in Harvard, I thought it would be good to mention to anyone who might even be watching later. You can actually get free courses in case financially it's a problem to be able to add more skills. There are free courses from Harvard, from Stanford, offered on Coursera, that you can be able to even apply for financial aid, and you can get to do a course and upskill for free. So that being said, my next question will be, which resources exist for people to learn about their career confidence needs?
Well, so you mentioned some, and I'll just take it a step further. Sometimes you have people in your network that have a particular expertise. Back in the early days of my consulting career, I worked for one of the big public accounting firms. They had a management consulting division. And I had a huge meeting early the next morning. It was 7 o'clock at night. And I was stuck because I could not remember from my graduate school classes how to do amortization. I couldn't remember what it was. And back then, the internet did not exist, folks. So I couldn't quick do a Google search, and I couldn't watch a YouTube video. So I did the next best thing. It was tax season. So I knew a friend of mine who was an accountant at a different firm. I knew she'd be working. So I called her up and I'm like, okay, don't laugh at me. I need to know what amortization is. And she, of course, laughed at me, and then she told me what it was. And just that 5 to 10 minute phone call explanation was all I needed. Oh, yeah, that's what it was. And then I was able to go back in and plug the number, if you will. And, you know, we did the financial projection, and I was all ready to go in the morning. But at 7 o'clock at night, the night before, I was kind of on the edge of a ledge. And, you know, the panic and terror were starting to set in because I didn't want to look stupid in the meeting in the morning. They were counting on me to having it done. But I was stressed and I hit a memory glitch and I couldn't remember a really basic principle but I found a friend in my network, or, you know, and you've got acquaintances, you've got people that you connect with on LinkedIn. Sometimes as an author, I get people reaching out to me and saying, Jill, what did you mean by this? Or, you know, can you explain this a little further? And so I think it's that seeking those resources. And maybe you need to actually go back to school. Maybe you need to take an actual class with real people and an instructor to walk you through. I know we all rely on, you know, courses and remote things, but, you know, there's a lot to be said about being in a classroom with other people who are learning the same things. You can set up your own study group. I've got a book discussion guide for the Compounding Your Confidence book, and some other things that I've worked on. And those questions are me as an expert walking you through issues you should discuss. So sit down with those ladies that you normally vent to. Why don't you all sit down and go through some constructive questions? And then it's how you frame the where you put yourself. And, you know, when I was first starting to work with boards, I realized there were a lot of dynamics about boards that I did not understand. I'd been on several at that point, but it's different when it's a client and they're paying you money versus being a volunteer. And so for me, I started taking, going to meetings and events of that very group of, you know, boards of directors. And I just sat in the audience and I went to meetings and I met people and I asked them questions. I listened to the guest speakers and I started to realize, oh, okay, I know exactly what I need to do, but I had the language of what the board suite, if you will, needed. So that, remember I said about that lady and she needed a translator? That's what I needed to know so that I could be more effective in those board settings. But I did that by immersing. Same thing before I became a business owner. I just celebrated 35 years in business for myself. I was a child.
Congratulations.
I was really young when I started. But it was interesting because I did exactly the same thing. I joined a group in the US. We have an organization called the National Association of Women Business Owners, or NAWBO. And I joined NAWBO in Minnesota as a corporate member. And I put myself around the very people that I wanted to be like one day. And so I was immersed in that energy, in that the interest and the issues and the topics and the conversations, so that when I went out on my own, it was familiar. I understood the realities of being a business owner. And yeah, I'm a child of entrepreneurs, so that was helpful as well. But I had gone, you know, the MBA route and very corporate perspective. And so it was different. And being prepared for that financial instability. When you're out on your own, you do not have a steady paycheck. Everything is, you know, peaks and valleys, and it's up and down, and you know, you have to have good stamina to be able to withstand that. And those are all things that really I was able to identify because I was around people who were living the dream every day. And it's not all it's cracked up to be on any given day. It's hard. It's very hard. But they shared those experiences. So I think, you know, looking for those people and resources that are doing the things you want to do. One last story, and then we can go to the next question. But I had an intern a while back, and she was amazing. And she was going to school for public relations, which is, you know, a pretty soft skill. And this woman was really, really smart and had vastly more potential than she realized. And I asked her one day why she wanted to go into public relations. She said, well, I like to write. I said, you do realize that you can write in the marketing department. There are, you know, when you're an executive, you're writing reports and board summaries, and there's lots of different ways that writing can be used. I said, I just told her, you know, I'm like, Maddie, anybody that I've ever known career-wise that was as smart and as capable as you was either a lawyer or had a master's degree in business administration. and they were working in, you know, profit centers in the company. They were leading profit centers, not working in staff support, which is what PR really functions more as. And she was very angry with me right after that session. But then she thought about it. And what's so fascinating now is she works for Heinz Kraft, which is a worldwide marketing conglomerate of consumer products. And she is a brand manager. She is doing exactly what I identified, you know, when she was 20 or 21, that she should be doing. And she found her path. But up until that point, no one had ever said to her, you know, why are you wasting your time on this? And, you know, she didn't like that, but her problem was she hadn't talked to enough people. She didn't know all of the other kinds of careers. So if you have young people in your life that are not sure about what they want to be or do, have them do informational interviewing with people, because that's how they'll learn what those jobs are like, what skills they need. You know, you could say, I like to write. Does that have anything to do in the career that you are in? All of those things matter. And I think all too often we leave those big decision points up to the, you know, to whoever happens to come into our orbit. We don't seek the opportunities. And when you seek those opportunities, that builds your confidence. And again, it's about becoming more than you thought you could be and taking more opportunities than you had allowed yourself to take.
That's amazing, because my next question is, if it's an individual's journey or an organization can participate in building career confidence and upskilling, how can organizations participate in that?
So organizations will do things like sometimes they offer internal training, sometimes they offer a stipend for people to go back to school or to take a class or to buy a course or even hire a coach. Some corporations will do that because they've identified there's a particular skill set that their person is lacking, and so they really want more, want them to learn more. But you know, it's okay for you to identify what you think you need to learn and not rely on someone else, because not all corporate cultures are set up to do exactly what we just talked about. And so if your company or the group you work for doesn't do or offer any of that, then take responsibility to step outside on your own and do all the things that we've talked about. And I think that for a lot of people, they're very passive about their future. You know, whatever happens will happen. You know, the universe will give me the people I need in my life. No, you got to go knock on a couple of doors, and you got to, you know, put yourself in some rooms and be a little uncomfortable. If you go to a network meeting, folks, and I go all the time and I'm ignored frequently. And, you know, it's so it hits you in the gut. You know, you're like, oh gosh, maybe I shouldn't be here. So I always look for, there's always somebody that will make eye contact. And then you smile, and if they smile back, oh, you want to make sure you talk to them. Or the food line is always a great place to meet people. And, you know, and if not, it's their loss, right? One other thing I would say is most of us belong to industry organizations of some sort, the associations, if you will. And I am a big believer in being a volunteer in associations and then building leadership skill. So by being present, you know, in those settings, you have an opportunity to really be able to step forward and learn some things, use your skills and talents. Sometimes it's just sweat equity, we call it. You know, you're doing it, you're volunteering to learn, but the benefits over the long haul are so significant. And it took me a long time to realize how much value in my own leadership development I got by being a volunteer leader in a lot of different groups. And, you know, I feed myself today off the things I learned, you know, by doing years and years ago. And that's where you can, if you've been intentional about what you want to work on, you know, a lot of times there's great ways for there to be good chemistry between what you want to work on and what they need volunteers to do. So just step into it. But it's a safe zone usually because you're around peers like yourself. So don't do all your venting there. But you want to use that as an opportunity for learning. And if you go into that with that good intention, I think a lot of people end up getting a lot more value. And as you become a leader in an organization like that, people look at you, they pay attention. Oh, she's really smart. Oh, she's really good at what she does. And then they might try and hire you away from that company that doesn't value you. And so you have some great opportunity with that.
What advice would you give organizations that are struggling with Generation Z? I think, I don't know if you've had many complaints, but I know of many managers who are saying this new generation coming into the workplace are very different. They don't want overtime. They don't want to do certain things to be in career progression. They're quiet quitting. Um, they want to work from home. What's your advice on how companies should react or respond to this new world order of working?
Well, that's a question we could do a whole hour on in and of itself, but I think there are a couple points that come to mind. One is from the company perspective and one is from the individual perspective. And I'll start with the company first. I think you have to identify those rising stars. Who are the people that could be good but just need a little push or need a little bit more? Encourage your supervisors to reach out or to engage differently. I know a lot of companies around the world went to remote work during COVID, and now they're just having, some of them are just forcing the issue to make people come back. And here's the thing. Sometimes if people leave because they don't want to be a true part of your workforce, okay, fine. Good luck on that. Grass is greener on the other side. And truthfully, I've had many clients where they had people who left and came back because what they thought the other opportunity was not what they had been sold, and they realized the mistake. So if you've had people leave, check in with them within a couple of months afterward just to see how they're doing or whatever. And if they give any kind of glimmer in the call that they might want to come back, have that conversation. And then I think for the individual, let me tell you flat out, if you're doing quiet quitting, you really don't have a big career future. Because I don't know anybody who has achieved major career success because they were disengaged from the work they do. I think that a lot of times people disengage because they're unhappy. They've been waiting for someone else to give them approval, or they've been waiting for a boss to recognize them. Well, that when you look at your own confidence, you have to decide that what you just did was good. And do that before you give it to your boss. If you're always only relying on your boss to give you that feedback, you often will be very disappointed because bosses are like parents with 10 kids. They just don't have the time during the day to give you each all of the love that you would like. And I think that the other element of that is you have to want your success. You cannot expect that other people are going to give it to you, especially if you're disengaging. Does that make sense, Mary?
It does. It does.
Yeah. And I think that, I'm one of the reasons that young people really like me is I am so candid with them. And I just tell them the truth. Look, if go ahead and quiet quit, that's your right. You can do that. But I will tell you that you're going to miss out on opportunities because it's at the coffee pot and in the break room. And as you're walking down the hallway, that somebody will go, oh, hey, Jill, come here a second. I want to talk to you about something. And it's a new opportunity. So years ago, when I was a baby consultant and I was working for that big CPA consulting group, we had like a 24-inch, again, I don't know the metric version of that. It was a lot of snow and it shut down Minneapolis. That's a lot. It takes a lot of snow to shut down our city, but the buses were still running to work. So I bundled myself up and I put my boots on and I walked a couple blocks and took the bus for the first time ever in my career downtown, because it wasn't safe to drive. So I let the bus driver do it, and I walked in. Out of 120 people in our company, less than 20 made it into the office. And I was the only young person and the only person in my group that showed up. Trust me, every partner in that office knew who I was by the end of that day, because they couldn't believe that I was as committed to doing my work, because we couldn't work remotely then. You know, you either didn't go to work or you went and you found a way. And I found a way because I was building those skills for that long-term future. And what was so amazing is that one of the partners noticed me. That was the first time he became really aware of me. And then I asked him, can we go to lunch sometime so I can talk to you about business development? Because he was what they call a rainmaker for the firm. So he was somebody that brought in a lot of business. And again, as I was planning for my own business someday, I needed to know how to do that. So I asked him after that day, and he of course said yes. And so we're talking, this is, over 35 years ago, right? I told you how long I've been in business. A couple weeks ago, I was at a Hall of Fame event, and this woman was being inducted into one of the Minnesota Women Business Owners Hall of Fame. I'm also an inductee in that. And I was listening to the introduction, and I just went, oh, I bet Byron is her father. So I went up to their table afterward. He was there. I hadn't seen him in all these years. And I just took a minute to say thank you to him for having taken the time to talk with a young professional that he met because I went to work in a snowstorm, that he fed me all these years, because his advice about how to build relationship and how to then take that to building a career and building client base and closing deals and all of that, I would have never been able to do that if he hadn't taken the time to share with me. And it was so amazing all these years later. I'm older now than he was when he gave me all that good advice. But it's so, I think the quiet quitters are going to have a very hard time achieving the kinds of success that I think they want to achieve. And so if you've been quiet quitting, either actually quit and go find a real job where you can be stimulated and valued and all the rest of it, or find a way to re-engage with your employer, because the work matters, that being present matters, and you don't serve your own career well if you fully disengage.
That's true. How does building career confidence help in leadership, in helping a person become a leader?
Well, a lot of people want to be a leader, but they're really lacking in certain attributes. Maybe they're not good at executive decision making. A lot of times they'll do these tests where they'll measure your executive decision making skill. But you can work on that. That's a skill that you can build. Or if you know that those at the higher levels need to better understand the difference between a to-do list and a strategy, then you need to spend some time working on learning how to do strategy. What does that mean? How does that come into play? How do tactics differ? How do you measure result? All of those things. And so I think part of it is just, you have to, as we talked earlier, break it down and make the opportunity for yourself to connect in some deeper ways to the skills of a leader, and then look for those opportunities. And actually, I said earlier about associations, that is such a great way to build your leadership skill, because you'll be surrounded by people who are at different stages in their career, who are at different generational levels than you, and all of them have their own unique way of leadership. So by expanding who you look at as a leader and the opportunities you see for leadership, you expand the possibilities for what you could incorporate into your own leadership style. But if you've only got one or two bosses or people at work that you're following or looking to, you're just not going to have the same level of insight. And I think that's where the more you expand that insight, the better able you'll be to be the kind of leader that you can be proud that you are. And again, it's all about building it and making it intentional.
So, as you've mentioned, you have written many books, um, Market Forces, and also Compounding Your Confidence. Where can we get these books? Of course, I'm going to share the links afterwards, but would you like to talk about them just very quickly?
I would love to. And I think for this audience, the Compounding Your Confidence book, that was the book that started it all. It's in paperback, ebook, and audiobook format, so you can get it however you want to consume it. And that book really explains the principles in greater detail. And then, like I said, we have more that we call it the confidence series. And so the career confidence workbook is all those questions and opportunities for reflection. And then I have a new tip book that'll be out. I can never get the camera angle right. It's got the 64 tips, and what's so great about it is they're the tips from the original book, and they just, they're super short and consumable nuggets, which I did it because Gen Z prefers shorter consumable content. So there it is. The Market Forces book is a very niche specific book. It's really for the senior living industry. I, over the years, have had subspecialty in that area, and it was helping to identify for executives and boards and people wanting to go into that industry the critical strategy issues that are challenging. And I see we have a comment from one of the audience members. Thanks. I'm so glad that advice has been helpful. And, I think really to kind of wrap it up, it's about taking control. Don't let your future be defined by other people. You look for ways to create your own pathways for success, your own opportunities for skill development, and reaching out and taking chances. Mary, when you had made the post that you wanted to interview some people, I threw my hat in the ring. I didn't know you, and I took a chance that you would be so thoughtful in your preparation, and you did such an amazing job of the work that you did on the front end. But that isn't the norm. There are a lot of people who have podcasts that I've been on who just don't have any of that professionalism. And what that shared for me about you is the kind of thoughtfulness and insight that you would put forward to the people that you coach and that you deliver your information and your insight to. And so for me, I just thought, it was such a great representation of yourself and what you wanted to do and offer.
Thank you so much. Our final question: if we forget everything that you have said, what's the one thing you want to leave us with?
I think the one thing I would leave you with is kind of an expansion of what I just shared. It's, we get so tired of dreaming about the future because we make it so big. And I remember as a kid, I wanted so much more than to just be Bobby Johnson's little girl. And I mean, I mean that in a good way. I wanted a career where I could impact others. I wanted an opportunity to make a difference and make a difference in a bigger way. What I've realized over the years is that you make a difference in a bigger way by the small actions that you take. And so what I'm excited about is there's going to be somebody that watches our video interview, whether they're online with us today or they catch it on the YouTube later, and it will matter. There will be some element or some nugget or some small piece of what I talked about that resonates and deep in their heart that opens up a possibility for them. And I remember that deep longing of the agony of how much I wanted something more. And now that I've gone through, and I'm at kind of an apex of my career all these years later, it was those small moments. It was those individual moments. It was that testing myself and realizing I survived. And some days survival was all you got. But more importantly, I learned. I debrief on everything I do as a way to expand my learning for the next time. And so it then becomes part of your conditioning and part of your process. And then ultimately it becomes part of what makes you successful.
Well, Jill, I am so, so humbled. You've taken your time to be here with me and to talk to me. Thank you for Kimberly. She's the one who made the comment on the greater.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for anyone else who's watching. I'm going to be sharing all of the links for Jill, her books, how you can find her, our website, and thank you so much for being here, Jill.
Oh, it was such a pleasure. Thank you so much for your work on the front end, Mary, and I love that we're an international force of good. So we're making a difference worldwide. So I love that.
Thank you so much. So for anyone watching on replay on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, please check the description. I will be posting all of Jill's links, how you can be able to reach out to her, where you can get her books on Amazon and everywhere else that books are sold. So until next Thursday, hopefully I'm going to have another inspiring speaker. Please remember that your mental health and your spiritual health, that is your true wealth. Thank you so much, Jill. Bye.
Bye now.
Sorry, the broadcast is taking long to end. Interesting.